Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that tries to cut through all the noise and give you the essentials you need to feel genuinely well-informed.
Yeah, because every day we're just swimming in information, aren't we? Social media, news headlines.
It feels overwhelming sometimes. Like, how do you even tell what's solid, what's well-supported, versus what's just fluff?
And we're making judgments constantly, reasoning through things. But yeah, how often do we stop and think, am I doing this well?
Right. And that's where logic comes in, isn't it?
That's exactly the sweet spot. For philosophers, logic is maybe their most fundamental tool. It's the study of reasoning itself.
So not just how we think.
No, not just observing how we happen to think, but more critically, figuring out how we ought to reason, to reach conclusions that are sound, defensible.
Okay, so this deep dive today is basically your shortcut. We're aiming to give you a kind of philosophical toolkit.
Yeah, tools to navigate complex ideas, understand different viewpoints, and just, think more clearly.
And philosophy, unlike maybe some other fields, often deals with questions where the answers aren't straightforward, right? They're elusive.
Which makes its methods, critical thinking, logic, so vital. It's really about exploring possibilities rigorously.
And maybe even being open to the idea that your own strongly held beliefs could be wrong.
That's a huge part of it. It's much less about what you should think and way more about how to think effectively.
So our mission today is pretty clear. We're going to unpack how philosophers argue. And just to be clear, we don't mean shouting.
No, definitely not shouting.
We'll look at the basic rules, the laws that kind of govern rational thought. We'll explore the different ways we draw conclusions.
Deduction, induction, abduction. We'll get into those.
And finally, sharpen our skills at spotting those common reasoning mistakes, the fallacies that can trip us all up.
So yeah, get ready to sharpen your mind.
Okay, let's start with that word. Argument. In philosophy, it doesn't mean what most people think, does it?
No, not at all. It's not a heated disagreement or a shouting match. It's much more structured.
Right. So what is it then?
An argument is simply a reasoned position. It's a set of reasons, which we call premises, offered in support of a particular point, the conclusion.
So you're giving reasons for why something should be believed.
Your individual goal might be to support your conclusion, sure, but the bigger philosophical picture, it's really about collaboratively getting closer to the truth.
I like that. The joint expedition, not a fight to win.
It's not a competition.
And this collaborative hunt for truth often uses something called dialectics.
Yes, dialectics. Think of it as a structured discussion, maybe even a debate between people with different views.
But the goal isn't to win.
No, the goal isn't to declare a winner. The real aim is to collectively move closer to the truth by exchanging ideas and refining beliefs.
How does that actually work in practice?
Well, it usually starts with a question. Someone offers an answer. Then that answer gets scrutinized.
Okay, put it in the microscope.
Right. People give reasons against it, maybe offer a counterexample.
A scenario where it doesn't hold up.
Exactly. Then everyone looks at the weaknesses, tries to refine the original answer, maybe tweak it, and then the whole process can repeat.
So it's iterative, back and forth.
Yeah, and that process itself, that refinement, holds a ton of value. It's not just about the final answer, if you even get one.
It sounds like a really productive way to hash things out. And you mentioned this isn't a new idea at all.
Oh, not even close. It has incredibly deep roots. We see early forms in, say, the Vedas from India, way back around 1500 BCE.
Wow.
Exploring big concepts like Brahman or Atman through essentially a Q&A format.
And later?
Later, especially in Buddhist texts, you see more structured, logical arguments emerging. Even using things like analogical reasoning to test ideas.
Like that soul analogical argument example.
Yeah, exactly. The soul is eternal. Space is eternal and unproduced. Therefore, the soul is eternal because it is unproduced.
It's very structured. You can see the inference clearly.
It shows an early grasp of formal logic. And then, over in ancient Greece, Socrates, famous through Plato's dialogues. He was the master of dialectic. He didn't actually write anything down himself.
Right. He preferred live conversation, dead discourse, he called writing, I think.
Something like that, yeah. His method was all about questioning, exposing inconsistencies or false beliefs in people's thinking, and guiding them towards discovering truth for themselves.
And his student, Aristotle, he took it even further.
Right, he really did. Aristotle gave us the first, formal, systematized account of inference, how we draw conclusions logically.
But we still teach his stuff today, right?
Absolutely. His system is still foundational. So yeah, both in India and Greece, you see this long history of structured reasoning and collaborative discussion being central to philosophy.
Okay, so if philosophy is about this reasoned pursuit of truth using arguments, then logic must be like the official rule book for playing the game.
That's a great way to put it. Logic provides these fundamental laws, you could call them, rules of thought itself.
Rules of thought.
Yeah, some philosophers argue they're constitutive norms, like without them, reliable, coherent thinking just wouldn't be possible. They're the bedrock.
Okay, so what's a key rule?
Well, one of the big ones is the law of non-contradiction. But first, let's quickly define a couple of terms.
Good for it.
A statement is just a sentence that can be true or false. My dog is sleeping. That's a statement.
Okay, true or false. Got it.
Its negation is simply denying it. My dog is not sleeping.
Simple enough.
Now, a contradiction is when you assert both a statement and its negation together.
Like saying, my dog is sleeping and my dog is not sleeping.
Exactly. And the law of non-contradiction says that's impossible. Contradictory statements cannot both be true in the same sense at the same time.
In the same sense at the same time. That seems crucial. Like your example of Josie the dog half on her bed.
Right. You might think, she's both on and not on the bed. But it depends how you define on the bed.
If on the bed means, say, at least 50% of her is on it,
then she is on the bed. And the statement, she is not on the bed, is false. The law holds you can't have both simultaneously in the same defined way.
Makes sense. And there's a related law, the law of the excluded middle.
Yep, closely related. It states that for any given statement, either that statement is true or its negation is true. There's no middle ground, no third option.
So either my dog is sleeping is true or my dog is not sleeping is true. One or the other has to be the case.
Precisely. It excludes any middle possibility.
So logic isn't just describing how things are, it's also about how we should think.
That's a key point. Logic is considered normative. It prescribes how we ought to reason, kind of like ethics prescribes how we ought to act.
I feel like inconsistency is bad reasoning.
We inherently believe we should avoid contradictions in our thinking. It's a standard we aim for.
Okay, let's get into some building blocks then. You mentioned conditionals, those if-then statements.
Yes, super important. If P, then Q. They're crucial for describing how the world works, for building theories.
The if part is the antecedent.
Antecedent, correct. And the then part is the consequent.
Okay, antecedent and consequent.
And where conditionals get really powerful is in understanding the concepts of necessary and sufficient conditions.
Right. This is important. Let's try to nail this down. Necessary condition.
Okay, Y is a necessary condition for X if X absolutely cannot be true unless Y is also true.
Like, having fuel is necessary for a car to run.
Perfect example. No fuel, no run. So fuel is necessary. In an if X, then Y statement, the consequent Y is always necessary for the antecedent.
Okay. And sufficient.
X is a sufficient condition for Y if the truth of X guarantees the truth of Y. If you know X is true, you automatically know Y is true.
Like being a poodle is sufficient for being a dog.
Exactly. If you know something's a poodle, you know for sure it's a dog. The antecedent X is always sufficient for the consequent Y.
But, and this seems key, sufficiency doesn't always work backwards.
Definitely not. Being a dog is not sufficient for being a poodle. Lots of dogs aren't poodles.
Right, just like being a mammal is necessary for being a dog, but being a dog isn't necessary for being a mammal. Cats, whales.
Spot on. Philosophers use these distinctions necessary, sufficient to define concepts really rigorously, trying to leave no room for ambiguity.
Which is super useful. And how do we test these kinds of claims? If someone makes an if-then statement or a general rule?
With counterexamples. A counterexample is basically a specific case or scenario that proves a general statement false.
Like the parent saying, if you spend all day in the sun, you will get sunburnt.
And the teenager cleverly replies, but if I wear SPF 50 sunblock, I won't get sunburn even if I'm in the sun all day.
That single case, using sunblock, disproves the parent's absolute if-then statement.
Precisely. And using counterexamples is a really powerful habit, not just for challenging others, but for testing your own beliefs. Actively look for cases where your rule might not apply.
That's good advice. Does this apply to those big universal statements too, like all X or Y?
Absolutely. A universal statement like all living things deserve moral consideration claims something about every single member of a category.
So you just need one exception.
One solid counterexample is enough to disprove it. If you can argue convincingly that, say, a harmful bacterium, while technically alive, doesn't deserve moral consideration in the same way a person or even an animal does, then that universal claim falls apart.
One strong counterexample can take down a whole universal claim. Powerful stuff.
It really is.
Okay, so we've got the rules, we've got conditionals. Let's go back to arguments themselves. You said they have two parts.
Right. The conclusion, that's the main point the person is trying to prove.
The thing they want you to accept.
Yeah. And the premises, those are the reasons, the evidence, the support being offered for that conclusion.
Are there clues to spot them, like keywords?
Often, yes. Words like therefore, so, hence, thus usually signal a conclusion is coming. And words like because, since, for, given that typically introduce premises.
Helpful. Now, you made a critical distinction earlier about analyzing arguments. It's not just about whether the statements are true.
No, that's crucial. Analysis happens on two levels. There's truth analysis. Are the individual premises and the conclusion factually correct? Do they match reality?
Okay, level 1. Is it true?
And level 2 is logical analysis. Do the premises, assuming they were true, actually provide proper support for the conclusion? Is the reasoning solid?
The connection between the parts.
Exactly. And in philosophy, especially those big questions where factual truth is hard to nail down, the logical analysis often takes center stage. Does the argument hang together? Is it consistent?
Can we see an example where these diverge?
Sure. How about this? Premise 1, the Battle of Hastings was in 1066. True. Premise 2, tamaracks are deciduous conifers. True. Conclusion. Therefore, Paris is the capital of France. True.
Okay, all true statements. But that makes no sense. The conclusion doesn't follow at all.
Exactly. The premises are true, the conclusion is true, but the logic is completely broken. There's no valid inference there.
Got it. What about the other way?
Okay. Premise 1. If the moon is made of green cheese, then mice vacation there. Logically plausible if the if part were true. Premise 2. The moon is made of green cheese. False. Conclusion. Therefore, mice vacation on the moon. False.
Right, false premises, false conclusion. But the reasoning feels kind of strong. Like, if those things were true.
Exactly. The reasoning structure is strong. It's actually modus ponens, which we'll get to. If the premises were true, the conclusion would have to be true. The logic holds, even though the content is false.
So truth and logic are separate things to check.
Absolutely. And that movement, that step from the premises to the conclusion, that's what we call an inference.
Okay, inference. And you said there are different types. 3 main ways we make these inferences.
Broadly speaking, yeah. We usually talk about deductive, inductive, and abductive reasoning.
Let's start with deduction. You said it's powerful.
It is, because if you have a valid deductive argument and your premises are actually true, the conclusion is guaranteed to be true. It offers certainty.
Guaranteed.
Because deduction is all about the structure, the form of the argument. A valid deductive structure is one where if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. It can't possibly be false.
So validity is about the structure, not the content.
Precisely. Validity tells you if the premises were true, the conclusion follows logically. It doesn't tell you if the premises are true in the real world.
Okay. Are there common valid structures we use?
Definitely. One is the disjunctive syllogism. It goes X or Y. Not X, therefore Y.
Like, we could either get pizza or tacos. We're not getting pizza, so we're getting tacos.
Perfect. That structure is valid. If the premises are true, the conclusion has to be.
What else?
Modus ponens, we kind of saw this already. If X, then YX, and therefore Y.
Our poodle example fits here. If it's a poodle, X, then it's a dog, Y. It is a poodle, X, therefore it's a dog, Y.
Spot on. Valid. And then there's modus tollens. If X, then Y. Not Y, therefore not X.
Okay, thinking, if it's a poodle X, then it's a dog, Y. It's not a dog, not Y. Therefore, it can't be a poodle, not X.
Exactly. If the consequent is false, the antecedent must also be false. These structures link right back to necessary and sufficient conditions.
Right, because Y, being a dog, is necessary for X, being a poodle, if you don't have the necessary condition.
You can't have the thing it's necessary for.
Okay, those are valid. But surely there are structures that look okay but aren't. Invalid ones.
Oh, absolutely. And they're very common mistakes. One is called affirming the consequent. The structure is, if X, then YY, therefore X.
Let's try an example. If it snows heavily, X, the schools close,
Right.
Y. The schools closed, Y, therefore it snowed heavily, X.
That sounds plausible, but is it valid?
Well, no. Schools could close for other reasons. A burst pipe, maybe?
Exactly. Just because the consequent Y happened doesn't guarantee the antecedent X caused it. Remember, X was sufficient for Y, but Y might happen for other reasons too. Affirming the consequent is a logical fallacy.
Got it. What's another invalid one?
Denying the antecedent. If X, then Y. Not X, therefore not Y.
Okay. If something is a dog, X, then it is a mammal, Y. Charlie is not a dog, not X. Therefore, Charlie is not a mammal, not Y.
What do you think? Valid.
No way. Charlie could easily be a cat or a hamster or lots of things that aren't dogs but are definitely mammals.
Right. Denying the sufficient condition, X, doesn't let you deny the necessary condition, Y. It's invalid. And the way you just disproved it.
By thinking of Charlie the cat.
That's using a counterexample for the argument itself. Finding a scenario where the premises could be true, Charlie is not a dog, is true. If dog, then mammal is true. But the conclusion, Charlie is not a mammal, is false. That proves the argument form is invalid.
Ah, okay. So counterexamples work for statements and for argument structures.
Yes, very useful tool.
So deduction gives us certainty if the structure is valid and the premises are true. But most of life isn't that certain, is it?
Not even close. Most of our everyday reasoning, and a lot of scientific reasoning too, relies on induction.
Induction. What's the core idea here?
Inductive reasoning involves gathering evidence, usually from experience or observation, to draw conclusions that are probably true, but not guaranteed. It goes beyond the information strictly contained in the premises.
So it's about likelihood, not certainty.
Think about it. Every swan you've ever seen has been white. So you induce the general conclusion, all swans are white.
Right, until someone finds a black swan in Australia.
Precisely. Induction is powerful, it's how we learn and generalize, but it's always open to being revised by new evidence. The conclusion is only probable.
We use this all the time, right?
Constantly. Believing the sun will rise tomorrow, that's inductive, based on past experience. David Hume famously pointed out we can't be deductively certain about it.
Because some crazy cosmic event isn't logically impossible.
Right. It's incredibly probable based on mountains of evidence and scientific laws, which are themselves often based on induction.
Yeah.
But it's not a deductive guarantee.
Okay, so observing things and generalizing is one type. What else?
We also reason inductively from general beliefs to specific cases or future predictions. If you generally believe that most dogs are friendly.
You'll probably assume the next dog you meet is friendly.
Yeah, or if your neighbor walks their dog like clockwork every single morning, you inductively reason they'll probably walk it again this morning.
Even though they could be sick or away.
The strength of an inductive inference depends heavily on the quality and quantity of the evidence. Seeing your neighbor once versus seeing them every day for a year makes a big difference.
Makes sense. Okay, so deduction for certainty, induction for probability based on evidence. What's the third one? Abduction.
Abductive reasoning or inference to the best explanation.
Inference of the best explanation. Okay.
Like induction, it's probabilistic, not guaranteed. But the key difference is that the conclusion is chosen because it provides the best explanation for the evidence we have.
Ah, so it's about explaining things, like detective work.
Your car won't start. The lights don't come on. The engine doesn't crank. What's the best explanation for all those symptoms?
Probably a dead battery.
Right. That explanation covers all the facts better than, say, out of gas, which wouldn't explain the deadlights. Or think about your freshly baked pumpkin bread vanishing from the counter, crumbs on the floor, the bag is torn up, and the dog is hiding under the table, avoiding eye contact.
Okay, I'm thinking the dog is the prime suspect here.
Right. The conclusion the dog ate the bread is the best explanation for that whole set of evidence.
That makes total sense. So how do we judge what makes an explanation best? Are there criteria?
Yeah, philosophers talk about explanatory virtues, things that make one explanation stronger than another.
Okay, like what?
First, it needs to actually be explanatory. It has to account for all or at least most of the relevant evidence.
So if my roommate ate the bread, that doesn't explain the torn bag or the guilty dog.
Exactly. The dog explanation covers more facts. Second, simplicity often helps.
Occam's razor. Don't make things more complicated than they need to be.
That's the idea. Entities should not be multiplied beyond necessity. Simpler explanations are often preferable, all else being equal. This is where conspiracy theories often stumble. They tend to be incredibly complex.
Right, involving huge numbers of people all keeping a secret perfectly.
Which leads to the next virtue, being conservative. A good explanation should fit reasonably well with what we already know and believe about the world.
Okay, it shouldn't require us to throw out everything else we think is true.
Ideally, no. Take the moon landing conspiracy again. Believing it means rejecting not just the landings, but tons of established physics, engineering, historical context. It clashes too much with well-established beliefs. It's not conservative.
Got it. What else makes an explanation good?
Depth. A good explanation shouldn't raise more puzzling questions than it answers. It should avoid unexplained explainers.
Unexplained explainers.
Yeah, like if someone tries to explain the moon landing conspiracy by saying the astronauts were brainwashed. Okay. But how does that kind of mass brainwashing work? How were thousands of NASA staff also controlled? That just introduces bigger mysteries. It lacks depth.
So, explanatory power, simplicity, conservativeness, depth. Those are the virtues.
Right. But they're more like guidelines, rules of thumb, not strict laws. Sometimes the truth is weird or complicated. Remember, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. These virtues help us weigh probabilities.
Okay, this is a great framework. We've covered good reasoning, deduction, induction, abduction. But what about bad reasoning? The mistakes we make.
Ah, yes. Informal fallacies. These are super common errors in reasoning.
Informal, so they're not about the logical structure like those invalid deductive forms.
Exactly. The problem isn't usually the pure structure, but something wrong with the content or the relationship between the premises and the conclusion. Spotting them often requires understanding the context and background information.
Okay. Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine someone arguing against a candidate for mayor, Mrs. Timmons. They say, well, I just have a bad feeling about her. She isn't even a Christian. And, the last woman mayor nearly bankrupted the city.
Yeah, none of those feel like relevant reasons for whether she'd be a good mayor.
Precisely. The feeling is irrelevant. Her religion is irrelevant to her governing ability. And what a previous female mayor did is irrelevant to her competence. Those are all informal fallacies, mistakes in the reasoning offered.
Okay. Are there categories of these fallacies? Ways to group them?
Yeah, broadly speaking, we can group them into maybe 4 types. First, fallacies of relevance.
Relevant, so the evidence just isn't logically connected.
Right, even if it might feel emotionally connected. A classic is the ad hominem attack. Ad hominem means to the person.
Attacking the person instead of their argument.
Exactly. You dismiss someone's position by attacking their character, their motives, maybe their circumstances, instead of engaging with the reasons they gave.
Like saying, we shouldn't listen to the councilwoman's plan for a solar project because she got arrested at a protest back in college.
Perfect example. Her past protest activity is irrelevant to the merits of her current solar plan. That's an ad hominem.
What's another relevance one?
Appeal to emotion. This is super common in advertising and politics.
Using feelings instead of facts.
Yeah, trying to manipulate emotions, pity, fear, pride, anger, to persuade someone, rather than providing solid reasons. Like, you can't possibly find the defendant guilty of embezzlement. Think of his poor, ailing mother. It would break our heart.
The state of his mother's heart has nothing to do with whether he embezzled funds.
Logically, no. That's an appeal to pity, a type of appeal to emotion.
Okay, so relevance fallacies. What's the next category?
Fallacies of weak induction. Here, the premises are relevant to the conclusion, but they're just too weak or flawed to properly support it.
Relevant, but not strong enough.
Like the hasty generalization. This is jumping to a conclusion based on way too little evidence.
My earlier, all swans are white example before finding black swans. Or maybe saying, that restaurant is terrible, after just one bad meal.
Or trying to predict a national election based on polling just your neighbors. The sample is too small or potentially unrepresentative. That's another weak induction fallacy, the biased sample.
Right, asking only members of a sci-fi book club whether a new fantasy movie is good. Their opinion might not represent the general audience.
Another one here is the appeal to ignorance.
Appeal to ignorance, how does that work?
It argues that because there's no proof that something is false, it must be true. Or conversely, because there's no proof it's true, it must be false.
Like nobody has ever proven ghosts don't exist, therefore they must exist.
That's the structure. But the absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, as they say. Lack of proof either way doesn't actually prove anything.
Okay, and another weak induction.
False cause attribution, often called post hoc ergo propter hoc, after this, therefore because of this. Assuming that because B happened after A must have caused B.
Correlation doesn't equal causation.
That's the mantra. Thinking your lucky socks caused your team to win just because you wore them during the game. Or, more seriously, maybe noticing ice cream sales and crime rates rise together in the summer.
And concluding ice cream causes crime, when really hot weather probably influences both.
Exactly. Mistaking correlation for causation is a very common false cause fallacy.
Got it. Relevance, weak induction. What's third?
Fallacies of unwarranted assumption. These arguments rely on some piece of information or belief that is assumed, often implicitly, but isn't justified or agreed upon.
Okay, assuming something you shouldn't.
The false dichotomy or false dilemma. This presents only two options as if they are the only possibilities, when in fact there might be other alternatives.
Like saying you're either with us or you're against us.
Classic example. It ignores the possibility of neutrality, partial agreement, or having a completely different stance. It forces a choice that might not be necessary.
And another assumption fallacy.
Begging the question or circular reasoning. This is a sneaky one.
How does it work?
The argument assumes the very thing it's trying to prove. The conclusion is smuggled into the premises, maybe in disguise.
Like arguing the Bible is the Word of God because the Bible says it's divinely inspired and the Word of God must be true.
Perfect. It assumes the Bible's divine authority, the conclusion, within the premise used to prove it. Or arguing abortion is murder because it's the intentional killing of an innocent human being.
Because that premise assumes a fetus is an innocent human being in the relevant moral sense, which is often the very point under debate.
Exactly. It assumes the controversial point rather than arguing for it. That's begging the question.
Okay, very tricky. And the last category.
Fallacies of diversion. These try to distract the audience from the actual argument or issue at hand.
Changing the subject, basically.
Pretty much. One common tactic is the straw man fallacy.
Building up a weak version of the opponent's argument to knock it down easily.
You got it. You misrepresent or distort your opponent's position, making it seem weaker or more extreme than it really is, and then you attack that distorted version.
Like if a politician argues for stricter environmental regulations and someone else claims, see, they just want to shut down all businesses and destroy the economy.
Yeah, that's likely a straw man. It misrepresents the original argument, stricter regulations, as something much more radical, shutting down all businesses, and attacks that instead.
Deceptive. What's another diversion tactic?
The red herring. This is where you completely change the subject to divert attention away from the real issue, often introducing something tangentially related, but ultimately irrelevant.
Like if I'm arguing with my teenager about getting their homework done and they suddenly start talking about how unfair it is that their sibling got a later curfew.
Exactly. The curfew issue is a distraction, a red herring thrown in to get you off the topic of the homework. It diverts the conversation completely.
Okay, these fallacies are everywhere once you start looking.
They really are. Being aware of them is a huge step towards clearer thinking, both in evaluating others' arguments and in making sure your own reasoning is sound.
So wow, we've really covered a lot of ground today.
We have. From understanding logic as philosophy's core tool, the idea of dialectics.
Yeah, tracing that back historically, then breaking down arguments into premises and conclusions, separating truth from logical support.
Exploring the big three.
Deduction, induction, abduction.
Right. The guaranteed, the probable, and the best explanation.
And finally, getting this rundown of common informal fallacies to watch out for. Relevance, weak induction, assumption, diversion.
It really feels like a practical toolkit.
That's the goal. These aren't just abstract philosophical concepts. They genuinely empower you to evaluate information more critically.
Whether it's news or social media or just a debate with a friend.
It helps you get closer to understanding, engage more constructively, and just make better sense of the incredibly complex world we live in. So here's something for you, the listener, to think about. Now that you've got this toolkit, how might you look back at a recent disagreement you had, or maybe a news article you read? How might you approach it differently now?
Yeah, and maybe even more importantly, what stands out about how you might test your own beliefs using some of these methods, looking for counterexamples, checking your assumptions.
It's about applying this knowledge.
Absolutely. Use these tools. Practice spotting fallacies. Think about necessary and sufficient conditions. It really can lead to clearer thinking and more informed decisions in your own life.
A fantastic goal. Thank you so much for breaking all this down.
My pleasure. It's crucial stuff.
And thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time.